today, the universe, the scientists are riddled with many questions which are called hard questions. There are no answers to it at all within the science. So one of the questions, there are so many of them which I do not want to enumerate. One of the questions is how does the brain work? The brain is a 3-pound jelly which is situated inside the head, and it's a great mystery. Brain is a crown jewel in creation and evolution, but we still do not understand how it really works. For the past so many decades, I have had the opportunity to hold this brain, look at it, go into it in great details. Yet, I know today very clearly that I know the one dimension of the brain, that is a physical dimension. I also know that there are many dimensions which I do not understand, I do not know. All these years, I had the tools like an operating microscope, endoscope, and so many micro instruments to go into this brain and look at various corners. Today, I had the very unique opportunity to seek the help of Sriyam to explore the same organ and find out the unknown dimensions of this brain. To begin with, the whole session is to know about the relationship between the science as well as the spirituality. For some interesting reasons, they don't come together because they are considered as two different religions. In my opinion, both are same. There is no difference between the science as well as the spirituality, because both of us paths are trying to look at the truth. But of course, in science, the tools are different. It is associated with a kind of a self-pride, recognition, and recognition by the others as well. So automatically there is a kind of a ego associated with that in the science, and it is individual based. But whereas spirituality is completely different. And my understanding is that science, with all the effort, is trying to give a logical explanation for the truth, whereas spirituality is trying to explain the logical experience of the truth. So this is my personal opinion. So I would like to request Sriyam to explain his view about the science and the spirituality. We are not looking at the differences. What is the commonalities between the two?
First of all, Doctor, thank you very much for this dialogue. You said many things about me, but let me tell you, it's also an honor and a privilege for me to be able to have a dialogue with you, because we know that you're a prominent brain surgeon in Bangalore right now at the moment. And then you travel all around the world and you talk about the brain. You attend many seminars, you have all those papers, I'm sure. Um, and sometimes I'm even afraid of giving you a call because I don't know in which operation theater you're standing with whose brain in your hand. You know, and so you're dealing with a prime organ, which is the most important organ in our system, with the human being. Now, um, I like to divide this into a couple of. We can go to other questions, but divisions. Then we'll bring them together.
Yes.
As you said, it's one. It is the most probably the complex organ that we have, and it controls everything from there. The whole body is controlled by this. Let's not worry about at the moment about whether this very complex advanced computer is running the system and whether somebody is running it through the system. That we'll keep away for the time being. But yes, it is. When you look at it, it is those little neurons and their whatever things, wire-like things that come out of the neurons. I don't know what they're called. You know it better. How they fire and how fast they fire and at what rate they fire. And also the brain cells have specialized functions. I'm just saying, for every activity, every thought, everything that we do, first it forms in the brain and then only it comes to the rest of the body. Now there is also the bigger question whether consciousness is a product of the brain however complex and advanced the brain is, agreed. Um, is consciousness a product of this brain, or is consciousness able to function through this instrument, which is because it's so good, it's so advanced? Which means, is there consciousness also without the brain? Uh, Now we are stepping into dangerous boundaries because a scientist would say, no, 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 there can't be consciousness. And when I say scientist, I mean people who say that science only belongs to the physical. We need to
Yes.
change this a little bit from here and look at a different viewpoint. Um, Having said that, both in yoga and in tantra and in all the systems of practice in which the mind is expanded and is made to look beyond its ordinary understanding, the brain still plays a very important part. Brain as it is. In our Yoga Shastras, the most important center of consciousness, I'm not, again, not that consciousness is the product of the brain, but from where the consciousness operates is the brain. In fact, it's called the Sahasrara. The thousand petal lotus is here. And the Brahmarandra, the little hole which is called the doorway to Brahman, the Supreme Being, according to Vedic terms, it lies between the cerebrum and the cerebellum. Somewhere. And
Yeah.
the uh, the reptilian brain, which probably starts from there and comes and then stretches down into the spinal cord, that is also a very important part of yogic and tantric studies. All these are important. And when we look at the fact that even the spinal cord, and the cerebellum, and the cerebrum, they're all made of neurons, brain matter. Each may have their own functions. Like at the back of the brain, you know that the
Yes.
optic nerve comes from here, and then eyes can see and so on. But I'm saying what has happened, I think. Okay. Now, also the important two master glands, especially one master gland is here in the brain, which is the pituitary. Right. Now, where is that? Yeah, here, there you are. You can't see the pineal in this, I suppose.
Yes. It comes here, sir.
Inside.
Yes,
Yeah.
inside.
Right, right. So you see,
This
so
is
the this is the cerebrum. Yeah. So the other thing is, recently I was looking at this a little bit about the brain, and they say that the cerebrum is not so small as one thinks. It is only because it's a flat. Suppose you think of a flat uh, surface. It is actually quite large, but it has been folded up and
yeah.
it looks small. So it's not really that, and it has functions, very important functions also. It's not as if only the cerebrum has
Yes.
function. Um, so now the question is, I have a feeling that while we study the most of the activities are of course in the cerebrum,
Yes, sir.
many of them, including the limbic system, which is at the back, somewhere in the center back of the brain, which is the one that gives us reactions to, yeah, suppose I'm faced with a sudden danger, I think the limbic system immediately sets into motion activity. Is that so? Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes. So while all these things are there, my feeling is because the cerebrum has become so important now for us in this world, for studies, for knowledge, for activity, for work, somewhere along the line, the reptilian part of the brain, which starts from there and ends at this bottom of the spine, this has been kind of neglected. So it needs a little more study on that. What are its functions? What is it? Normally, yes, you have the right vagus nerve, you have the left vagus nerve, which comes out of the spinal cord, controls the breathing, controls the heart. Yes. But beyond that, are there any functions vis-a-vis consciousness?
Yes, sir.
expansion of consciousness. This is why I'm saying this is because traditionally we have so many chakras, centers.
Right, sir.
If you know that if you look at the anatomy of the body, of the nervous system, you'll see plexuses in front.
Yes.
Now the chakras are not plexuses, but they seem to come almost around the same place, location as we talk about the chakras. So there must be a link between them.
Absolutely.
Must be. And since the vagus nerve also controls your heartbeat and your lungs, breathing, I think there is some link between, because when you're emotionally calm and quiet, the breathing is calm and quiet. When
Yes.
you're agitated, it is very agitated, including the heartbeat.
Yes, sir.
So what I'm trying to say is we have to look at holistically, look at it. That there is a complex link between the mind, the emotions, the brain, the other old brain, the reptilian brain, the spinal cord included, and the medulla oblongata included, very important. Vishuddha chakra is actually here. So there is a complex intertwining of these things. And the job of the yogi is to release this from ordinary movement, which we all do, like eat, drink, have desires, and so on. To move it away from that, so the energy is concentrated on the higher. So the question is, when it says higher, does it mean that there are higher centers of the brain operating at that point? It's a question. I don't know. Today you have all the tools by which you can see the activity of the brain. You have all the tools. So I'm saying the best, well, we'll come to that later. So now, having said this, you know that when people have epilepsy,
Yes, sir.
a certain part, I don't know where it is, somewhere on the side, I think in the brain. Where is that, sir?
So normally in the temporal lobe, yes.
In the temporal lobe. So the temporal lobe is it right or left? Both temporal
Both
lobes.
sides. Both sides.
Both sides. So what happens is here in epilepsy, the neurons are firing faster than normal. I think that's what. Yeah. But when that part is activated, even artificially, people have visions. Even epileptics have visions. Before they get into an epileptic fit, they see some colors, then some of them see. Even in, I think, when people have that very bad headache called, what's it called?
Migraine.
Migraine. They also have visions. Sometimes they smell some.
It's called aura.
So, huh?
It's called aura, sir. Aura.
Auras, yes. So there is some link between different centers of the brain and these changes in the mood and changes in the activity of the brain and the expression of it. There seems to be definite, I mean, it is very clear that there is some link. The only thing that is not clear is whether this can be controlled by the yogi. That is not clear. Can the mind control these activities, or is the mind a result of these activities? This is the prime question. So, what I'm trying to say is, okay, we'll stop there. Then,
Today's fundamental thing is this is supposed to be a voluntary organ where we have majority of it is under control. Is it really voluntary or can we make it voluntary? So as you have beautifully described, sir, we had a reptilian brain which almost ends here, including entire spinal cord. This is the medulla and the brain stem, and this is the part where the reptilian brain ends. And this is about 400 million old. And above that, we have developed. This is called an instinct brain, where there is no
say
memory.
that again. 400 million
Year old reptilian
old.
brain.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is called.
Just a moment, doctor. Can you see it developing when the child is in the womb, in the fetus?
Yes, sir. In fact,
Yeah.
that's the first part to develop actually.
Okay, fine.
In fifth week of pregnancy, the first synapses develop in the reptilian brain itself.
Okay.
So the next is around that we have, and this reptilian brain doesn't require any memory.
Right.
No learning is associated. It is just a response based. Yet there is something related to the ego where it stands out for the survival and is a territorial, most of it. That is why the reptilians have this property, so it's called reptilian brain.
Correct. We also have to a great extent
Yes, sir. So the
as a Homo sapien.
next one we have developed is the limbic brain, which is around this reptilian brain. It is called an emotional brain, which is about 150 million old. That is all in the evolution. And from there, we have developed this huge cerebrum, which is called an intellectual brain or a neocortex, which is just 4 million old. That's all. So, though there are three divisions, the entire brain works as seamlessly as a single unit. So, now there is so much of interconnections. So, as the brain is, as Sir said, is nicely folded and kept inside the brain, the entire surface area of the brain and the cerebellum is about 2 square meters. So,
rolled up.
Yeah, rolled up.
Folded up.
So, folded up. It has been having 100 billion neurons with an ability to form 300 trillion synapses in our lifetime. That's the capacity.
So synapses are the connections between the neurons.
The nerve cells communicate.
This way, that way, both.
In both ways.
Okay.
Sir, now the question is, many are interested in this organ. Neurobiologists, we are the neuroscientists, psychologists, quantum physicists, and the spiritual masters. Now, we have the three brains here. The spiritual books describe, apart from these three, the neuroscience has been described as mana, buddhi, chitta, and ahankara. These four divisions we don't find in any of this. We talk, most of it is brain. Psychologists talk about mind, whereas the quantum physicists talk about quantum fields of energy. Whereas manaha, buddhi, chitta, and ahankara we don't find anywhere. We would like to know your view. What is your explanation of the different functions of that four aspects?
Okay, let me start this way. I forgot to mention something. Yeah. So it's not only in the brain, but apparently there are neurons also in the digestive system, in the intestine.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now,
so
the brain has been extended into the gut. So there are neurons inside the intestine. So now we call intestine as the second brain. That's it.
Exactly. That's what I'm asking. So the intestine is also called the second brain because there are neurons, even though the brain is not there, but there are neurons there. So I think that probably comes from this expression gut feeling. This is my gut feeling. It's in the guts. So, and according to Ayurveda, every disease, everything starts from the gut. If you keep the gut clear, then everything is clear. Right?
Even in allopathy, it is believed now, sir.
Oh, good. At least they have come there. So, anyway, so that's what I was trying to say. Now, from there, let me go to something else, which is I'm in going into this for many years, but I didn't get someone with expertise in the brain to talk like this. But I have talked here and there with some people, but not someone who actually takes the brain, cuts it, and so. What I'm trying to say is this thing which we call consciousness, which is also awareness, self-awareness. Yes. Without self-awareness, you cannot think of consciousness at all. Then it is unconscious. I'm not saying that unconscious, there is nothing happening there. That is also important. But normally when you say consciousness, it means self-awareness and the seeing the consciousness functioning also, depending on its reaction. Now, it doesn't look to me as if the brain is the repository or the brain is one which makes consciousness, produces consciousness as its product. Because even before this Homo sapien brain has developed so much, and even before the chimps also have a very good brain. It's quite almost. In fact, the number of genes that the chimp has, I think the chromosomes are one more than us. We have one less. So maybe there is some different. Now there is a different subject. I don't want to go into this. My belief is that at some point the beings are the living beings who were before the Homo sapiens. Some kind of an alteration has happened in their genes. What do you call that when there is a
Mutation.
mutation? So nobody knows why mutations happen, but very often mutate. And from mutation, there is a major change after that, even in the species, according to Darwin also. I have a feeling that after, just before the Homo sapien brainness begins to emerge as it is now, there has been some mutation. And that mutation has cut off one of the chromosomes and made it less for us because there were other functions to do. And the chimp has remained a chimp and we have become Homo sapiens. Whether that mutation took place naturally and organically in this system, or whether the mutation was introduced by other highly intelligent beings, we don't know. Then this is a very controversial question. I don't even want to introduce this here. So now we have got this brain. But what I'm trying to say is, even before even the animal brain or the reptilian brain, and now this our brains, Homo sapien brain, consciousness existed even in things which are normally do not contain a structure specially called a brain. Why I'm saying this? A tree, if you plant a tree, now there is no particular section in a tree where there is a brain. It seems to me as if every cell has its own intelligence. Every cell has its own intelligence. It helps the tree nutrition to produce food. If you plant a tree in the shade, there is a brain inside the cells of the tree which make it go towards the sun.
Yes.
And if there is a water available, then the roots go towards the water. There is no complex brain structure there. But every cell has some intelligence.
Yes.
It is not developed into specialized neurons or anything, but it has. I would call that intelligence as the primary consciousness.
Right.
And that doesn't have a brain as such. As we know it, it doesn't have a brain. Go to inanimate objects. Go to the quantum units. I'm not saying particles because some people say it's a wave. I'm not saying particle or wave. That's a big question. Go to the quantum units.
Yes, sir.
They have an intelligence. They behave in different ways. There is no brain out there to see. No developed instrument. There is no neuron. Nothing. But even when one element changes into another, in case because the electron jumps from one circle to another, it seems to operate under some kind of an intelligence of its own, built in. Organically, definitely, because when a disease attacks an organ, all the cells combine together and try to push it out. So you get the white blood corpuscles growing more, resisting. I don't think the conscious brain has anything to do with that. Is there?
No.
No. So there is a brain in the cell. Each cell has a brain. I mean, it's not physical brain. There is an intelligence. Now, what I'm coming to this after saying all this is that while the brain is the most developed organ in our system, therefore it's able to process and able to project the needs that the consciousness wants to bring about in its scheme of evolution. We don't know what that evolution is. The brain is the one organ which is capable of doing it to perfection as of now.
Yes.
Yes. So the civilization that we have today is a product of this. I'm saying, could it be that there are still unexplored parts of the brain, including the spinal cord, which may lead us to an evolution which is beyond this? Yeah, this evolution is, you know how this evolution is. We try to be perfect as much as possible. We try to be better than the other, the ego.
Yes.
We think intelligently, buddhi. Uh, we have ahankara, which is ahankara means I-ness first. When I wake up and say that I exist, ahankara begins already. When I say I isolate myself as I exist, then the other becomes separate. So there is division. So this interaction of divisions is what the whole world is about. Now, a person who evolves, you say, oh, he's not so selfish, he's very unselfish. That means he's evolving out of that division and becoming one. He's going towards unity. Unity. So, as of now, the maximum the brain has done, our brain as it is, the parts that we know, is to take us to this kind of life. I'm saying, are there, because in Tantra, Yoga Tantras, the Shastra of chakras and so on, there is ways and means by which this brain, with its practical functions, which are very good and necessary for us, can be shut down so that something else comes into operation, which takes us directly to consciousness without going through the usual circuit.
Right.
I personally believe, this is what yogis have believed, that to touch consciousness which is beyond the ordinary functions of the known parts of the brain today, one needs to free the brain from its selfish involvements, from its tension, from its conflict. So when a brain which has no conflict whatsoever, no tension of any kind, no anger towards anyone, let me put it this way, no division of you and me.
Yes.
When the mind becomes close to that, you can't say 100% close to that, then I think some other parts of the brain begin to function, which lead us to wider horizons of consciousness. So the entire sadhana and spiritual life is oriented towards this breakthrough.
Right.
Now, the question is, which only you can answer, only that when this happens, is there also a change in the neurons and in the brain cell?
Yes, sir.
That is what
Yes.
I can't tell.
Yes, sir. Now the modern science believes that originally we thought the nerve cells cannot be changed.
Okay.
Now we know that every day we can change the brain. That's the beauty. That's why I think spirituality should play a significant role in achieving that. Now we have the cell here is called neuron, and neurons has got a communication system that is the axon, through which the electrical signals go there, and these are which form the synapses, where the chemicals are released from the electrical signal generated from the neuron. Now, what you see here, tree-like branches, is called dendrites.
Okay.
So ultimately, it is the dendrite is the one which receives the sensation, transforms that sensation into a thought, and generates activity through the axon. Now,
so what is the nucleus? What is the nucleus's function?
Nucleus's function is to sustain the cell, sir.
Okay, so it is the center.
It is the center. If the nucleus goes, the entire system goes.
Okay.
It is the center. Whereas these dendrites have the ability to form and reform, and they can also form synapses with other neurons. So
other neurons.
Yes, sir. Now the modern science believes there is something what is called like a gardening, pruning. So the pruning happens. That is why new dendrites will keep forming depending upon the activity, what kind of activity we do, and depending upon the positive emotions and the negative emotions, the synapses numbers will increase. The chemical substance which is delivered there, called neuropeptides and neurotransmitters, also will change. So that will change the entire function of the nerve cell. So that's how the entire nerve cell can be modified. That's the reason if we don't use the brain, these dendrites will gradually disappear over a period of time. That's what happens with the aging. So, however much we can use, I think the fundamental thing is to use the brain. That's the most important. And
So may I ask you a question? Do we have people who have more number of dendrites and less number of dendrites
yes, sir.
in their cells,
Yes,
in
sir.
the neurons?
And yes, sir. Neurons are constant, but the dendrites, see, the neurons are 100 billion estimated.
Roughly,
But
yes.
the dendrites, depending on the capacity, can vary from 100 trillion to 300 trillion. And the synapses also follow that.
So can I ask you? So are you saying that by changing your mode of existence, living, practice, and concentration, one can change the structures of the dendrites? Is that what you're trying to say?
Absolutely. Exactly. Number of dendrites, structure of the dendrites, and the function of the dendrites also.
Also, so then what happens? So if we consciously try to change that, then there is a corresponding change in the dendrite.
Yes, sir.
Dendrites. Now the question is whether it's because the dendrites are changing that we have this, or because is it the other way around?
Yes, because of the dendrites are changing, you keep changing your attitudes.
Or is it because I change my attitude that the dendrites are changing? Which is correct?
The second one is correct, sir. If you change the attitude, the dendrite will change.
So which means we can handle our brain in a way.
Completely we can handle, sir. Today's modern science says that you have love and empathy, and dendrites will
That
be
I have it plenty.
Dendrites will change phenomenally to that extent.
Okay.
Synapses will change, and the neurotransmitters will change. You have the dopamine, oxytocin, and tranquilizers produced inside the brain. You are in a very blissful state. So what is described as Anandamaya Kosha. So you will be in that space. If you are
But wait a minute, doctor. So is Anandamaya Kosha a product of the changing of dendrites, or?
I don't know that, sir. I wanted to ask you that because physiologically, we classify the brain as the voluntary brain, involuntary brain, and molecular and chemical brain, which is produced by the hypothalamus.
Right.
Now it is proven that depending upon your thinking, you are going to modify the nerve structure, modify the neurotransmitter. So that's how your mental status, personality, behavior can be modified.
The question that they will generally ask now when we say this will be that is the initial change coming because of the change in the brain, or is it coming because even when I want to actively change, the brain is functioning in some way, right? Because thought processes are going on.
Yes, sir.
So what is initiated first? I mean, this is the question.
Yes, sir. This is the question. So for a long time, I also believe that the mind is the product of the brain. And mind is captured or imprisoned within the skull. That's the concept I had, many people had. Now we believe that it's no longer. The mind and the is there not only in the brain, of course, maximum amount of the mind works around the brain, but it is spread all along the body, as you said. Every living cell has its own mind, and it goes outside the body also. I want to ask you this very interesting question, sir. Mind nobody has seen, but it seems to be a common person's knowledge. When two people are sitting and talking, now we know that mind goes beyond and entangles with them to sustain the attention between the two people. And it's a common practice to ask, if you don't mind, can I leave?
So is there a way to actually find this out using some instrument that when two people are talking and they are in, to use the French expression, en rapport with each other, is it possible that there is some kind of ECG or encephalograph or something like that, or some image which can show that when people are in rapport with each other, there is a different function going on in the brain, and when they leave, it changes. Is there some way? Are there some instances?
Yes, sir. The electrical activity changes, but that is within the brain. Whereas
It can't be detected.
no, the quantum field of energy can be detected where it entangles between the two people.
You can.
That's why, yes. That is
Through
why,
images?
yes, sir, through images,
Oh,
holographic studies. That is
okay.
why, if the one person is strong, he can influence my mind. And now today, the generation of thought is very questionable. Whether it is neurochemical reaction inside the brain which generates the thought, or the mind generates the thought first. Which is first, we do not know. But if you influence my mind can change, produce appropriate changes inside the brain dendrites, so that the whole function of the nervous system can be modified or modulated. So this is the proven
So,
fact today.
so isn't it very close to hypnosis?
More or less. But
More or less.
hypnosis is a very transient phenomenon, whereas
Hmm.
here, if you constantly reinforce that idea, that can change. And accordingly, the entire memory system, neurosynapses, chemicals can change. So this is one
Okay.
of the things which is now being used for the good as well as the terrorism, the conversion, all things
Yes.
to do positive.
Now this is the point. In this conversion business, religious conversion, for
Yeah.
instance, when somebody is ready to tie a bomb and kill himself, expecting to go to higher levels and so on, higher
Yes,
realms
sir.
in heaven. Um, so
Yes, sir.
it is also usually accompanied by music and chanting and things like that. So, what I'm going to ask you
Yes,
is,
sir.
does music, in some form or the other, have a certain impact
Yes,
on
sir.
the brain which can bring about a certain change and remove
Yes,
all
sir.
tensions and remove all conflicts for the time being, temporarily, so that the mind
Yes.
becomes so
Yes, sir.
sensitive that any suggestion implanted there begins to work and change even the structure of the brain? Is that so?
Yes, sir. Because mind always thinks two sides, to be or not to be, to do it or not to do it. That's the reason it creates a conflict. Now, every thought is associated with a conflict. It depends
Yes.
upon your intention as well as
Okay.
attention that
Okay.
converts the conflict and makes the action initiated in the nervous cell. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
music, for some reason, removes that resistance. That's why it is called flow state of consciousness. The consciousness becomes so resistant free like a river. So you
Ex-
enjoy that.
Except that it can be positive as well as negative.
Negative. Some music has a phenomenal impact. The neurotransmitters produced during that time is like a tranquilizer. It's like
Mm.
diazepam, Valium, what the factories produce today. The best quality diazepam is produced inside as a tranquilizer inside the brain. So you get into a state, and it also alters easy changes. You move into a kind of a alpha activity where you are alert but restful completely.
Right.
So
Right.
that produces is called as a flow state of consciousness. That's what you also achieve in initial part of the meditation also.
So when this happens, when what you call the alpha state is happening, can you actually detect it in the functioning of the brain through images and things like that? Can the
With
brain be
yes,
measured?
yes, sir. Through the functional MRI, we know what are the areas which are getting activated, and through the
Okay.
electrical activity, we know that we are getting into that state. And
So
when
when so when the mind is calm and quiet and in that attitude you're talking about, what are the major parts of the brain which are activated?
uh, when the mind is calm, sir, some areas of the cortex, especially the singular cortex inside these deeper areas. Yes,
The
yes,
thing that connects both the lobes together.
yes.
And
No,
when
they're two separate, but it is in the inside part. It is called
right.
soonest gyrus, anterior part.
Ah, ah,
Becomes
ah.
that becomes very active. Apart from some areas of the frontal lobe, frontal
Frontal.
lobe is the most advanced brain, where it
Hmm.
controls all other rest of the limbic emotions and the reptilian brain.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
So
Hmm.
one gets into that. Same
Hmm.
thing, very interestingly, when you are in a very deep meditation, it changes into a beta activity. gamma activity. It is called gamma rhythm of the EEG. That is the highest. It is about 30 to 100 hertz.
So
And
what happens with that?
with the depending upon the advanced meditative state, the entire brain becomes very active. In fact, but at the same time, the sensory input becomes very focused into the brain. So so all other areas are cut off. You become very highly focused. You will become innovative, creative, and it also gives a beautiful feeling inside. That's what
Now,
it is.
independent of the sense instruments?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Independent of sense instruments.
So this takes us to another question.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible also for the brain at a certain stage to function with all sensations without depending on the sense organs?
Yes, it should be possible, sir, because every sensation is being constructed inside the brain, not in the sense organ.
Right.
Now, it's very interesting that every sense organ fires at 110 millivolts.
Okay.
It is, whether it touches, every sensation is the same firing rate. So it is interesting why different sensations are felt in the brain. So there are two mechanisms. One is each of the receptor touches one particular part of the brain where it's on the direct link. So it gives the same sensation all the time.
Okay.
Now, second thing is the sensation is interpreted. Sensation doesn't have any description.
Right.
So the sensation
it's just a wave.
Is just a wave. Based on the sensation is converted into a thought and also an experience. So that comes from the memory. It takes the memory
of previous experiences.
That is why mind cannot detect anything what it doesn't know previously. It's a very interesting question.
Now my question is, can the mind detect something which it does not know?
No, it cannot.
We are saying yes.
According to that, it cannot.
So we are saying, I'm trying to say that, that there is some kind of situation. I don't know I don't know the neurological basis of this. You asked me, I'm dumb. But there is some where all the experiences of the five senses, at least some, or not all, if some, can be felt by the brain even when the sense organs are not active and all at once.
Sure.
Sense organs, one eye operates, you see only the figure. Touch, you only get the touch. Then the brain puts it together and says, this is this. But here I'm saying, is it possible when all of this is shut off, the motor part of the brain is shut off, you get the experience of the world with all these, as if all the sense organs are working together.
Yes.
Without them being active.
Yes, sir.
Not that the sensations are coming from there, but the sensations are coming from inside. And now, here, sometimes the memory does not play much of a part.
Yes, sir.
Because when the memory comes, then it defines.
Correct.
This is this. This is this. This is what I'm just opening up discussion. I'm not forming conclusions. I'm just saying from my understanding that is this possible?
It is possible, sir, because let us see the first scenario where there is a sense organ is active. For example, eye. It gives a image signal to the occipital cortex here, and all that it gives from the eye is that gives the height of the object, color of the object, and shape of the object.
Correct.
From the primary area, it takes cues from the secondary visual area, from the memory. And in the past, what are the possibilities of a structure like this? And it tells immediately to the speech area, says it is the pen. And once I remove the pen, if I ask the question, what did you see now? It's already that image is stored. And that is already. And it says, I have seen the pen. And every day, the eye has got 130 million receptors. So it's
eye or the optical center?
Eye, sir. So it is like a 130 million pixel camera.
Okay.
So each of these images are seen, interpreted based on the memory and then it is pushed back into the images. And all these images are reconstructed here actually. No pen is seen, and the whole world, that's what is the concept. I do not see anything. The mind, what color, everything is interpreted and reconstructed by the brain.
So we don't see anything. We see only the images produced by the brain, depending on senses and the memory.
Yes, sir. So these memories,
We actually don't see anything.
these memories can get reconstructed in the dreams, though there is no active sensory. So that's
Right,
why
right,
it's
right,
possible.
right.
Without a sensory organ being active, you can actually have a vivid as well as lucid reconstruction.
Everything, the whole world.
Whole world, yes.
But they
That is also
depended
not
on
here.
no, but they're dependent on previous impressions, which have already been.
Yes. So my question is, sometimes people see in the visions what they haven't seen in their lifetime. So that is the question, how to explain that we don't have in the science. You need
They
to tell us.
more than see, they probably experience.
Experience. Yes, sir.
Seeing is not a right definition for that.
Yes, sir.
It is an experience which has no previous memory.
Trace of
Memory of what we know.
yes.
Now, brain, I don't know how to do this, but psychologically, the only way to get there or to understand this is to be free of all the prejudices, memories, anything that you have had about anything. Perhaps when the slate is wiped clean.
Yes.
I don't know whether it's possible to totally wipe it clean to a great extent, let's say. The whole process of saying meditate and keep your mind quiet and keep your thoughts calm is the beginning of this. It's just the tarmac. Then you have something happens which is not, you cannot even call it experience, because most experiences, or almost, depend on memory, depend on what images you have had, what you have experienced. Then this is something which is out of all this, which is not. But when that is touched, my understanding is you have touched the core of consciousness.
Yes.
Now, having touched the core of consciousness, this consciousness can be adapted according to the brain, because the brain is the only thing that finally can interpret, translate, manifest. But to get there, you need to be free of the ordinary brain. That's what I'm saying, which is always calculating, which is always comparing, which is always full of memories. Like, I'm seeing you now on the screen. I'm seeing you as if I'm seeing you for the first time. Believe me. I have no memories of when you were standing with a mask, even before COVID, when my surgery was going on. I have, all that is gone. I mean, it's somewhere in the brain, but I'm not seeing you with that. You know what I mean? Or the experiences we had. Or I'm seeing you now as you are. Yeah. So I think if the mind is trained, it has to be trained in the beginning before it breaks, to see things as they are, as opposed to seeing things as they are projected to us. Like you said, we see nothing except the image given to us by the senses and then recorded and memorized and so on. We don't see anything else. So we really don't see the world. We see only the image offered to us from that object. We don't see the object really. Now, the ancients said that if you see any object as it is originally, without all these memories, comparisons, and so on, then you have seen the whole universe. It could be just. So, what I'm trying to say, perhaps the origin of consciousness is there. And to touch that, we need to go to that part of the mind which is free of conflicts and confusion and images and memories, when it is purely clear, then that consciousness that functions there is not a product of the brain. This is just my theory, okay? You can prove, disprove. My understanding. From understanding, not simply a theory, uh, there is that consciousness, which perhaps is not a product of the brain, but it functions through the brain. And depending upon the quality of the brain and the training it is received, it manifests itself in greater ways.
Yes, sir.
Probably. Now, even if I have to talk to you about this right now, the brain has to be good. Otherwise, I can't discuss this. All I'm saying is, in all the discussion, I'm not belittling the function. It is the biggest thing and the best thing possible that we have is our developed brain. No question about that. My only thing is there some way then we can find out slowly, including in neurology, like neurotheology, for instance, which is a new thing going on.
Yes.
Is it possible to figure out through experiments, if possible, that in a person who has gone beyond the ordinary mode of thinking, which we were discussing just now, there are any neural changes?
Yes.
Is there something happening?
Yes.
I think there is. I have a suspicion, lurking suspicion.
No, sir, it is possible, sir, because till now we were depending on the electroencephalography, EEG, which is the electrical activity that is being picked up at the cortex surface.
Yes. Cortex, yes.
Today, we realize that deep inside the brain, there are many nuclei which will regulate, modify, and modulate the functions of the entire brain.
Okay.
So, today, the technology permits us to put fine electrodes inside the brain, and each nucleus has its own activity, which is like a signature. So, we are trying to study.
It's like an orchestra.
We are trying to study how it is. Now, for example, at a sensation level, when the sensation comes as a primary sensation, it is just an electrical signal, and it doesn't. It cannot be described. It cannot be compared, and there is no prejudice. The moment we take clue from the memory, then it becomes describable.
So this memory is the fellow there.
Memory is the culprit. Now, most of the times, we have to use the memory to describe the word.
Exactly.
But what happens always is the memory uses us.
Exactly.
When the memory uses
now, this is interesting. This is interesting. And I think we need to stop now. It's more than an hour. It was so interesting. We forgot the time. So in the next session, I want to also discuss with you to find out from you whether there are parts of the brain which are special to memory and things like that, and go a little bit. I mean, are there any local areas where memory is, or is it part of the whole? Let's get into that, and also the spinal cord.
Yes, sir, definitely. So before we go there, one last question, if I can ask. We talk so much about evolution of the brain from a single cell to multiple cells and to this complex structure today. Is there such evaluation even in the spirituality that we talk about reptiles and various sexuality?
I think we'll take that up in the next, because it's a big subject. We need to go into this carefully. So I want you to repeat this question when we start. So we can carry on from there and go. I don't want to finish, in a hurry.
Sure, sir.
So these are things which... Thank you, sir. Thank you, doctor. Thank you very much. So we'll look forward to another talk on 9th. Thank you, doctor. It was really... I learned many things, of course.
Thank you so much, sir. It's a great exploration for me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Guru Bhyo Namaha.